Tensions are really getting high in the Middle East. Putin is saying that if Trump was president, then he would have never gone to war with Ukraine. You also have Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney reiterating the fact that Iran is not allowed nuclear weapons, which is kind of a precursor for the fact that we might be joining America if this develops into a full-fledged war. Yeah, there's a lot to take a look at. Oh, yeah. Also, the fact that Mark Carney is hitting back America with retaliatory tariffs. So we're standing up to the big guy, apparently. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, we're going to start off with more international stuff, or I guess things that are specifically about Putin, Russia, and Iran. So here we go. Kicking things off with the fact that President Putin announces support for Iran and says that they have the right to peaceful use of atomic energy. This has always been our position. That's a little scary.
Relations between Russia and Iran. We support Iran in its struggle for its legitimate interests, including the interests with respect to peaceful uses of the atomic energy. And this has always been our position. This is our principled position, including in this conflict. It has never changed. And those who claim that we should have done more, well, what more?
All right, so things are very much picking up, and that's not the only clip. There's also this clip of Putin saying that he's ready to meet with Zelensky, but an agreement must be signed by the Ukraine's legitimate authorities. Now, this doesn't have the dubbed version, so we're not going to play it, as you can tell right here. But Russia wants to end the conflict in Ukraine as soon as possible, ideally through peaceful means, which is a huge step in the right direction. Until you see that the United States announces new sanctions targeting Iran, which is not going to be received very well. And let's take a look here at some of the recent damage that took place in Tel Aviv overnight. Absolutely shredded by bombs. Their city center, their stock exchange also got hit. And then, well, let's say look at Prime Minister Carney's support for America denuclearizing Iran.
Conflict in the Middle East, and whether or not you support the U.S. directly striking Iran in the goal of diminishing their nuclear capacity.
And say the following, which is that the prospect, in any sense of that word, of Iran having a nuclear weapon is fundamentally destabilizing to peace in the Middle East and broader peace and stability in the world. We support at first point. Secondly, we absolutely support and stand by Israel and in its right to defend itself and protect itself. We join others in looking for a resolution of this crisis that ensures that there is not a nuclear weapon or nuclear capacity in Iran, that ensures the safety and stability of all countries, Israel included, in the region, and that leads to broader peace or prospect of broader peace in the Middle East. And I'll draw attention to the G7 statement agreed by all G7 leaders that the resolution of this crisis should be accompanied by a ceasefire in Gaza. Thank you very much.
There you go. Canada remains in its position that we've always known Canada to be in. Peacekeepers. We will stand ultimately with the United States if push does come to shove, but calling for peace is pretty much the ongoing theme when it comes to this. Like, nobody wants to see a full-fledged war take place, and it's sparked a lot of controversy. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think that Canada will get involved in some capacity with Iran, or do you think that something else would happen? Let me know what you guys think. Next up, getting over to full-fledged Canadian news, the Canada Post reaches a deal with second largest union, as reported by CTV. Canada Post says it's reached a contract deal with the second largest union, with negotiations continue with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. The Crown Corp says a new collective agreement with the Canadian Postmasters and Assistants Association comes after 18 months of negotiations. In the same span of time, it has been in talks with Coop W. It says that the new agreement includes 11% wage increase over 3 years, which is half decent. Retroactive to the start of 2024, including a 6% increase in the first year, 3% for 2025 and 2% for 2026. Canada Post is still trying to reach a deal with CoopW, the largest union representing about 55,000 postal workers. So there you go. It seems like Canada Post is finally out of the crosshairs of negativity and stalling everyone's life with their ongoing protests and stuff like that, and they might actually get back to full-fledged work, which is good, which is very, very good. Next up, speaking of getting back to full-fledged work, this bridge in Surrey is 2 years behind schedule, and you wouldn't even guess, maybe you would guess, why they are still behind schedule. Well, the government delayed the bridge in 2023 to 2024, and at the time attributed delays to on-site investigative work and permitting holdups due to the COVID pandemic. Of course. Should have voted Conservative. Let's take a look.
The days of the old Patello Bridge are numbered, and its replacement quite literally looms over it. The new bridge is just months away from completion, so head engineer Wendy Itgawa agrees to take us on a tour starting below the bridge deck on a trestle. You could call it the first piece of this massive puzzle.
Building the trestle was a significant feature in itself, and that we had to go through the right permitting to put piles in the river. This was one of the first things we did on the project to complete before we could actually start working on the tower.
That tower completed just over a year ago. It's the tallest of its kind in BC at 167 meters high. Dozens of cables connect it to the bridge deck, which will soon span from New Westminster to Surrey. Crews make a 25-story climb to the deck to get to work.
And this is what's called the South Approach, connecting into King George Boulevard. We've completed the South Approach now. I'm just working on the finishing.
Finishing includes paving lanes and installing pedestrian and bike pathways. Meanwhile, on the north side, there's still an 80-meter hole with crews working on both sides to bridge the gap.
We're installing the cables and the deck, and we'll be connecting to the north side later this summer. Following that, we'll be completing the finishes, and the bridge will open later this fall.
Yeah, bullshit. It's not. Canada sucks in so many different ways. We just don't know how to get things done in a timely manner. We don't build anything. Our construction takes forever. It's always overpriced and over budget and super delayed. And it frustrates me. It frustrates me because I see how other countries do it. And they just build and they build, and they can get apartment complex, a whole apartment or a condo built in like a couple of months, it feels like. In Canada, it takes several years. I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting, but hey, elbows up, right? This is what the people voted for. Oh my freaking goodness. And then speaking of what the people voted for, CBC accidentally told the truth, according to Mark Nixon on X. David Cochrane says you can't replace 80% of Canada's trade with America with other countries. Seems like the CBC might actually be coming around to reality.
You know, when the Prime Minister says we can give ourselves far more than any other country can take away, I get the rhetorical argument there, but boy, that U.S. economy is just so massive and so big, and I just don't know if interprovincial trade barriers and finding domestic procurement options for steel and aluminum can offset just what, you know, the further erosion of that economic relationship can do.
Look, you're absolutely right. I mean, Mark Carney can talk as tough as he wants, but the fact of the matter is, you know, almost 80% of our trade is south of the border. We have to try to live through the Donald Trump years, and we can't just overnight diversify our trade to India or China or anywhere else in the world, or Europe for that matter. It's just the economies are too integrated.
You know, when the Prime Minister says
that would take years and years and years to even remotely, I don't even want to say successfully pull off, but half-ass pull it off. I mean, you can't just divert all of our trade away from America to other countries and expect that it's going to happen in a relatively timely manner. We should not be trying to fight America, and we should be trying to double down on our trade with America. But hey, who am I? Just some idiot sitting in an RV. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. So do you agree with this idiot or you disagree? Let me know. Then this was a bit of a oopsie. Did the Liberals admit to borrowing $95 billion so Canada can fight the USA on tariffs? Uh-oh.
Why did you set up a $95 billion borrowing authority for geopolitical risk if we're going to get a deal with the U.S.?
Well, listen, we've always been clear since day one that we want to have no tariffs and that we're fighting for Canadian workers, the industry, and at the same time building our country. So we would continue, and we're continuing. I mean, you've seen it. We just had the G7. Prime Minister was there with the President. The Minister LeBlanc has been very active. We're very, very engaged to defend Canadian interests.
But $95 billion is a lot of money to borrow, right?
Well, listen, you know, we have a number of tools in the toolbox. You know, what Canadians expected us when we started that was to fight for them, but at the same time be prudent when it comes to looking at what we might be able to do to support industry. You've seen that we're now affected by unfair steel and aluminum tariffs. So we've been there to fight. We've been there to support the industry, the workers, and at the same time favor also domestic consumption of what we produce in Canada.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're just driving us into further debt. A $95 billion loan quietly taking place is absolutely absurd. I don't know who could have possibly voted for this who has, you know, half a decent level IQ. This is ridiculous. We are so screwed with our amount of debt. Like, we probably can't even keep up with our interest payments alone. It's baffling how stupid this country's voter base seems to be, voting for perpetual debt. What doesn't matter with you guys? You know what? Get in there, cut all social programs. I hate to say it because I actually think a lot of the social programs are very good. $10 a day childcare, I think that's a half decent program. But we can't afford that right now. We can't afford a lot of the things that we're doing. Okay? It's just like if you are in your own house and you have car rentals, mortgage payments, groceries, and you're still planning vacation funds and you're in debt. You're spending more than you're making. Well, you can't just keep doing that because it feels good. You got to eventually adjust and start to spend less than what you're making so that you are in, you know, not a deficit. So again, it's just weird. It's weird that people are voting for short-term comfort and long-term pain instead of doing short-term pain by cutting a bunch of social programs and long-term gain, right? It wouldn't take that long to turn the ship around and to actually be in a net positive. But again, who am I? Just an idiot sitting in an RV. Anyways, let's take a look now at our new kind of a nightmare that we're facing with, which is U.S. trade negotiations and tariffs.
Where do we stand right now?
Yeah, well, Roger announced yesterday was that the federal government on July 21st will adjust its countermeasures when it comes to steel and aluminum tariffs. In June, Donald Trump and the U.S. administration hiked tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%. Since then, Canada has not responded and has not increased its own retaliatory measures. But yesterday, Prime Minister Mark Carney said that on July 21st, depending on how negotiations go with the United States over a new trade agreement, will make necessary adjustments on July 21st. The Prime Minister said yesterday that Canada's counter tariffs will be adjusted to levels consistent with progress made during trade negotiations. So that means we don't know what the change will be, what the number will be, whether tariffs will go up or come down. It will all depend on progress being made between the two sides when it comes to a new trade agreement. And that July 21st deadline coincides exactly with a 30-day period of time and deadline that Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney set for themselves on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Kananaskis to get a deal done. So they have until July 21st to come to an agreement. That is kind of what they agreed upon. And the federal government is showing how serious it is about that deadline by applying perhaps a little more pressure in saying that on July 21st, depending on how things go, they could change their countermeasures. And so this is perhaps, a negotiating tactic by the Canadian government, by Prime Minister Mark Carney, to indicate how seriously they are taking this deadline and how much they want to get a deal done sooner than later. So this will likely be one of the things discussed today when the Prime Minister meets with premiers from across the country as Canada continues to work on a new trade agreement with the U.S. and assess the current tariff situation and whether or not to make make adjustments on July 21st. So it's a bit of a wait and see situation here, Roger. We know that the federal government is kind of applying a little bit of pressure. What happens on July 21st is not clear yet. It will depend heavily on how negotiations go between the U.S. administration and the Canadian government.
And just quickly before we go, we know Dominic LeBlanc is meeting with officials from the Trump administration. Any idea of the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think has been ongoing. The two sides have continued to meet, have continued to have discussions, and I think this will continue to happen. We don't know exactly what will be discussed. Of course, he is the intergovernmental affairs minister, so that is his role. He'll continue to play a crucial role in negotiations with the U.S. as Canada looks to identify kind of what the key points are in negotiations ongoing that will get the two sides closer together. That will get them to an agreement. We don't know what those details are. They've been pretty, tight-lipped on what specifically a new agreement could look like between Canada and the U.S. As to be expected, those negotiations will happen between closed doors. But clearly, there's still some work to be done for an agreement to be reached. And Canada's position is that they'll continue to work to do so, and they'll reassess on July 21st, depending on how much progress is made.
Okay, Jeremy, thanks as always.
Oh my goodness. I mean, there it is. We now have confirmation that we are literally trying to fight America on this. And I don't agree with this. I don't agree. I don't agree with tariffs being put on Canada, but I don't agree with our prime minister's approach to retaliatory tariffs with a deadline. Trump, America's not even focusing on Canada right now. Not to say that Trump won't respond or his people won't respond appropriately to our deadline, which is June 21st, June 21st. I think he said June 21st. But we're also dealing with a lot of bigger issues, like the fact that there's terrorists out there that have potentially nuclear weapons. Why is our media talking about that? Why are we just focusing on the silly little nitty gritty stuff? I don't know. It just feels all sorts of out of whack. Maybe I'm too focused on the Iranian nuclear thing. Maybe my algorithm has been just flooded with that stuff because I have a genuine interest in that conflict. So maybe I have my own personal bias and now my algorithm's just all stuff about that. I don't know, but I just feel like our politicians, they just got their priorities all kind of out of whack. Also, today, if I'm not mistaken, was the last day for question period. So they're off until September, if I'm not mistaken. So, hey, good job. Taxpayers' money going really good towards paying the people to do the jobs. Said nobody ever. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button, subscribe. That's all I care about. I'll see you in another one. Bye for now.